Welcome to The Explainer, where we break down big ideas. And today, we're diving into a really provocative paper that asks a question that's probably on a lot of our minds.
It's a question I think a lot of us are wrestling with. Politics these days can feel so chaotic, so polarized, just completely broken. But what if the cause isn't what we think it is? What if the root of the problem isn't political at all?
Well, a brand new paper, The Exhausted State, throws a real curveball. It says if you really want to understand our political mess, you have to stop looking at ideologies and start looking at our brains. The core idea is pretty wild. What if democracy has, minimum system requirements, and our biology just isn't meeting them anymore?
So where do they even start with an idea like that? Well, the paper starts by prying open what it calls the black box of political error. We all know politicians and voters mess up, right? That's not new. But this paper asks a totally different question. What are those mistakes literally made of on a physical level?
And when they look inside that box, they're saying, we don't find some abstract academic concept. Nope, we find biology. We find that the actual cognitive hardware, our brains, needed to run a super complex society is, it's deteriorating. Political irrationality, in this view, isn't just some weird quirk in the data. It's a symptom of a physical, biological problem.
Okay, so a huge piece of this puzzle is a concept they call decision noise. And honestly, the best way to picture it is just like static on an old radio. It's not a bias that pushes you left or right, it's just random fuzz. It's the little mistakes we make when we're tired or distracted or just totally overwhelmed. When our brains are not firing on all cylinders.
And here's why that static, that noise, is so incredibly dangerous for a democracy. See, in a healthy population, one with high cognitive capacity, all those little random mistakes people make, they tend to cancel each other out. That's the whole wisdom of the crowd idea in action. But in a low-capacity population, something scary happens. People start getting tripped up by the same simple emotional triggers. Their errors aren't random anymore. They start to line up. People start making the exact same mistakes. And when that happens, the errors don't cancel out. They amplify. And the collective wisdom, that democratic signal, it gets completely drowned out by the noise.
Okay, so if our collective brain power is going down, the big question is, why? What could possibly be degrading our biological hardware on such a massive scale? Well, the paper points to a multi-front assault. It's coming from our environment, our technology, even from our own bodies.
The paper lays out this whole rogues gallery of what it calls biological insults. And we're not talking about abstract theories here. These are documented, real-world things with known physical impacts on our brains. We're talking everything from neurotoxins in the air to the very algorithms that are rewiring how we think. Let's just start with one of the big ones.
Yeah, let's put a number on this just to see how real it is. Check this out. According to a major study, leaded gasoline alone is estimated to have wiped out a cumulative, get this, 824 times million IQ points from the U.S. population. That is just staggering, and this isn't some dusty historical fact. It's had massive, generational consequences.
And you really have to let this sink in. The generation that was exposed to the absolute peak of this neurotoxin, right when their brains were developing, who are they today? Well, they're the generation that is now running our most important institutions. Our government, our corporations, you name it.
And look, the assault didn't just end with leaded gas. The paper is clear that this is an ongoing problem, and it's getting worse. You've got air pollution, which is now being directly linked to dementia and even shifts in how people vote. You've got widespread metabolic issues that mess with the part of our brain responsible for long-term planning, kind of important for a functioning society. And then there's the big one, social media. The algorithms are literally designed to hijack our attention and train our brains for outrage and distraction.
So all of this brings us to the next piece of the argument, and this is where it gets really scary. It's a devastating feedback loop that the paper calls the complexity trap. This is where the degraded biology starts to poison the institutions themselves.
The idea here is that we're basically racking up complexity debt in our own government. Think about it. A cognitively stressed group of leaders creates a messy, complicated policy. That policy inevitably causes a bunch of new, unforeseen problems. So what does the next group of leaders do? They don't fix the root cause. They just slap an even messier patch on top of it. You repeat that cycle for decades, and you end up with systems, like our tax code or healthcare regulations, that are so tangled and convoluted, literally no one fully understands how they work anymore.
There's this great metaphor in the paper, institutional sedimentation. It's like each generation is just dumping a new layer of policy on top of the old ones. but they've lost the blueprints, they can't even see the foundations anymore. So what you get isn't just a complex system, it's an incoherent one. It's like a building where people just kept adding rooms and floors without a plan until the whole thing is ready to collapse.
And that right there is the trap. Because to fix this mess, to actually simplify these systems, what do you need? You need massive brain power, you need clear thinking, long-term focus, and incredible attention to detail. But the whole argument of the paper is that that's the exact cognitive capacity we're losing. The disease is literally blocking its own cure.
So, where does this all lead? Well, this brings us to the paper's most chilling conclusion. If a society's collective ability to handle complexity is plummeting, what kind of political system is actually best suited to survive in that environment?
The paper frames this in terms of communication systems. Think of democracy as a high-bandwidth protocol. It needs millions of nodes, that's us, the citizens, to process a ton of complex information really well. But when the signal gets weak and the noise gets too loud, that system just breaks. Now, think about authoritarianism. It's a low-bandwidth protocol. It only needs a few nodes at the top to do the thinking. Everyone else, they just have to comply. So, in a world full of cognitive static and low brain power, the paper warns that the simple, low-bandwidth system can start to look a lot more functional. And that creates a terrifying evolutionary pressure away from democracy.
So, is that it? Are we boomed? Well, the authors don't pretend there are any easy answers, but they do sketch out 3 possible and pretty radical exit paths. 1, we could basically outsource complex decision-making to an AI, a sort of AI prosthetic for the state. 2, we could go for radical federalism, basically shrinking government down to a local scale that our diminished capacity can actually handle. Or 3, we could try to build a real cognitive partnership, using AI not to replace us, but to help us understand the crazy complexity we've built for ourselves.
And the paper leaves us with this final thought. It's not a prediction of doom, it's a warning. The argument is that tyranny might not arrive with a bang. We might be building it, quietly, inadvertently, one leaded water pipe, one polluted breath, one doom scroll at a time. It's a failure to protect our collective cognitive health, our biological infrastructure. And that completely reframes what something like public health even means. It's not just about feeling good. It might just be the non-negotiable prerequisite for democracy itself. A pretty wild and unsettling thought to chew on.